Turned out to be, though, nothing to applaud because legislators then were threatening lawsuits if governors didn't take the money, and I vetoed some of the funds that I knew we couldn't maintain the programs that we were going to pay for with these borrowed, printed up, invented dollars out of nowhere. But lawsuits were threatened. Even in Alaska, in a Republican-controlled legislature, my veto was overridden, and the money poured into those states, and I believe we will see this play out in our states. The federal government will have taken more control over the people who live in our states. Now, I understand wanting to believe that this is all free money, and for some, I guess it's tough to tell people no in tough times. Plus, remember our administration promised that it would be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. Remember Vice President Biden? He was put in charge of a tough, unprecedented oversight effort. That's how it was introduced. You know why? Because nobody messes with Joe. Now, this was all part of that hope and change and transparency, and now a year later, I got to ask those supporters of all that, how's that hopey, changey stuff working out for you? See, I tried to look into that transparency thing, but Joe's meetings with the Transparency and Accountability Board, it was closed to the public. Yeah, they held a transparency meeting behind closed doors. So, not sure if anybody's messing with Joe, but here is what I do know. A lot of that stimulus cash, it ended up in some pretty odd places, including districts that didn't even exist, and programs that really don't have a whole lot to do with stimulating the economy. Nearly $6 million was given to a Democrat pollster who had already made millions during the Democrats' presidential primary. Nearly $10 million was spent to update the stimulus website. And one state even spent $1 million to put up signs that advertised that they were spending the federal stimulus projects, or as someone put it, this was $1 million effort using your money to tell you it's spending your money. And it didn't create a single job. These uses of stimulus funds don't sound targeted, and they don't sound timely as we were promised. They just sound wasteful, and in the case of those signs, kind of ridiculous. All of that stimulus. I don't know about you, but seeing those checks written for some of these pet projects of congressmen and those in the White House, did you feel very stimulated? And then it turns out that Washington got the price tag wrong. All of these projects and programs, they cost tens and tens of billions of dollars more than we were told. It's now closer to $860 billion. Add this to the fact that the White House can't even tell us how many jobs were actually created. Depending on who you ask, it's anywhere from thousands to 2 million. But one number that we are sure of is the unemployment number, and that's at 9.7, which is well above the 8% mark that we were promised our stimulus package would go to avoid. And underemployment now is 16.5%. You've got all these people who've just kind of given up right now, and they're not even enrolling in some of these programs. Tough to count them. Folks, I won't go into all of it tonight, but the list of broken promises is long. Candidate Obama pledged to end closed-door sweetheart deals and no-bid contracts once and for all. But just last month, his administration awarded a $25 million no-bid contract to a Democrat donor. Is that hope? Nope. It's not hope. That's the same old in Washington, D.C., and instead of changing the way Washington does business, we got the Cornhusker kickback and the Louisiana Purchase and millions of tax breaks for union bosses' desires. The promised ban on lobbyists in this new administration, they handed out waivers left and right, and there are more than 40 former lobbyists who now work at the top levels in this administration. And these days, most members of Congress, they don't get to read the bill before they have to vote on it, much less the pledge that a bill wouldn't be signed into law until we all had 5 days to review it online. So, see, it's easy to understand why Americans are shaking their heads when Washington has broken trust with the people that these politicians are to be serving. We're drowning in national debt, and many of us have had enough. Principles in all of this, it's easy to understand. It really is, even though I think DC would just love for us to believe that this is all way over our heads. Somebody in Tennessee, somebody up there in Alaska, she'll never understand what we're talking about here in DC. No, this is all pretty simple stuff. When our families, when our small businesses, we start running our finances into the red, what do? We tighten our belts and we cut back budgets. Isn't that what we teach our children, to live within our means? So what Todd and I do when we have to make payroll, buy new equipment for our commercial fishing business, we have to plan for the future and meet a budget. But in Washington, why is it just the opposite of that? This week, they unveiled a record-busting, mind-boggling $3.8 trillion federal budget. And they keep borrowing, and they keep printing these dollars, and they keep making us more and more beholden to foreign countries, and they keep making us take these steps towards insolvency. Now, what they're doing in proposing these big new programs with giant price tags, they're sticking our kids with the bill, and that's immoral. That's generational theft. We're stealing the opportunities from our children. Around this country need to be aware that all of this makes us more beholden to other countries. It makes us less secure. It makes us less free, and that should tick us off. So, folks, with all these serious challenges ahead, we've got private sector job creation that has got to take place, and got these economic woes and health care, the war on terror. But as the saying goes, if you can't ride two horses at once, you shouldn't be in the circus. So here's some advice for those in D.C. who want to shine in the greatest show on earth. Too often when big government and big business get together and cronyism sets in, well, it benefits insiders, not everyday Americans. The administration and Congress should do what we did up there in Alaska when the good old boys started making backroom deals that were benefiting big oil and not the citizens of the state. And the citizens of the state, then, Alaskans, we got together and we put government back on the side of the people. And a lot of the bigwigs, they started getting in trouble, and some of the bigwigs ended up going to jail over their backroom deals. Our government needs to adopt a pro-market agenda that doesn't pick winners and losers, but it invites competition and it levels the playing field for everyone. Washington has got to, across the board, lower taxes for small businesses so that our mom and pops can reinvest and hire people so that our businesses can thrive. They should support competition, support innovation, reward hard work. And they should do all that they can to make sure that the game is fair without that undue corrupt influence. And then they need to get government out of the way. If they would do this, our economy, it would roar back to life. And for instance, on health care, we need bipartisan solutions to help families, not increase taxes. Remember that red reset button that America, through Secretary Clinton, she gave to Putin? Remember that? I think we should ask for that back and hand it instead to Congress and say, no, start all over on this health care scheme and pass meaningful market-based reforms that incorporate some simple steps that have broad support. The best ideas, not backroom deals, but things like insurance purchases across state lines and the tort reform that we've talked about. Those things that are common sense steps towards reform that the White House and leaders on the Democrat side of the aisle in Congress, they don't want to consider. So it makes you wonder, what truly is their motivation? What is their intention if they won't even consider these common sense, broad-based support ideas that would work? And to create jobs, Washington should jumpstart energy projects. I said it during the campaign, and I'll say it now. We need an all-of-the-above approach to energy policy. That means proven, conventional resource development and support for nuclear power, and I was thankful that the President at least mentioned nuclear power in a State of the Union.